My name is Linda Balentine, and I host this weekly program of interviews gathered from the mountains of Appalachia. I invite you to relax and sit a spell with us as we share our stories with you every Friday at noon. So today, let's get started. All righty, I'm sitting on the front porch, our theoretical digital front porch, with Tony Petroskey. And Tony, I know that Petroskey is not a local name like Lightner or Buzzard or so where in the heck did you hail from, and how in the world did you get down here to, you're in Bath now, but you spent years in Highland County. All right, so
yes,
talk to me.
Yes, I did. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for having me tell some of my vignettes.
Yeah, they're good ones.
And,
you've got it. You've got a lot of them. I said Chip Hill had a hay wagon full. You've got a teepee full.
Well, my name comes from various sources. My legal name, nobody knew this, is Antonio Petroskey Santiago.
I think I've heard that before, but Santiago.
Yes.
All right.
Petroskey is my father's name. His family's from Poland. Santiago is my mom's name because Puerto Ricans carry both names.
Isn't that neat?
Yeah. So it's pretty cool.
But you simplified it for us Southwest Virginia people.
Tony Petroskey. That's all you need.
That works.
And when I lived up in Bluegrass in Highland County, it was Tree.
That's right. It was Tree. Boy,
Yep.
Those were the days.
Those were the days.
All right. But so what brought you down here? Why did you pick this area of Appalachia? This is the middle section of Appalachia. It's absolutely gorgeous.
Now, I know you want to know the truth, right?
I do want. Just lay it on me.
Okay. Before I tell you my history, I'm going to tell you why I came to Highland and stayed.
Okay.
I came to Highland because I was driving through to go to West Virginia, look for communes and, in the day looking for
Back to the earth
activity.
Movement, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing what's happening. I was getting low on gas. I was driving a little VW Bug. Mm-hmm. And I stopped at Forks of Waters. There was a small old grocery store with a gas pump in the front.
Oh, for goodness sake.
And I thought, okay, I can get gas here and then go down 250 and head over the mountain. So I got out, filled the Volkswagen up, shut the pump off. I went inside to pay. And I figured, that everybody would know what I have. Nobody was in the store except the owner, and I think his name was Pink Mullinax.
And he was blind.
He was blind.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he was blind. He was standing behind the counter. I didn't know that he was blind.
Right.
But I walked up to the counter, and he heard me. He said, okay, what did you get? And I said, I don't know how many gallons of gas it was. And he says, okay, that's $5 and something cents. I gave him a $10 bill, and he took the bill, pulled out a box of money, and he said, here, make out your change. And I was floored. I said, make out my change? He says, yeah, make change and take what I owe you. And that's when I realized he was blind.
Right.
And I thought, man, I can rob this guy blind, but I'm not that kind of person.
Right.
I took the money and I thought, I have never lived anywhere except Puerto Rico that people would be so trusting. Mm-hmm. And it turned me on completely. And I said, I need to go nowhere else. I'm staying here.
Well, I am really glad that happened. And a funny addendum to that is I wound up buying that general store from Pink. And I used to remember him sitting in the front window in his Panama hat because there wasn't a lot of traffic. He had the one single light bulb hanging in this very dark store.
That's right.
With a wood stove. And he used to sit and shuffle his feet while he was just looking out the window. I've got a picture of him through this sort of rain-splattered window. It's a beautiful picture. I'll have to find it and show it to you.
Oh, that's really neat.
And so he used to shuffle his feet. And he literally dug a hole about 2 feet by 2 feet down to, and the bull pine floors were seriously thick, not like now, okay?
Yeah.
And he put in a huge indentation. He wore out those bull pine floors just sitting there on that bay window seat.
See, I didn't know that. I
Yeah.
would love to see that floor.
I'm sure that spot is still there. Nobody has done anything to that floor. So the next time you're down there, it's now called Ginseng Mountain Store. Ski and Debbie Ellington bought it
They
after we
still
were
own
there.
it.
They still own it. And you can walk right in, and it is the bay window to the left when you walk in the door. And there it is. But he put in some serious thinking time.
That's wonderful.
Spot in that spot.
That is wonderful. Well, that's what caused me to stay in Highland County. My trip was my itinerary. It wasn't focused on Highland. It was focused on extreme western West Virginia, close to the Ohio line. I figured land would be cheaper over there. There would be more land.
So you were really looking to,
Yeah.
gentrify yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
But it took you a long time to ever get around to that point. But so then where did you go? You turned around that little bug. It was full of gas. And then what'd you do? I mean, you didn't have a place to stay. What'd you do?
No, I didn't have a place to stay. And I drove over Straight Creek, and I met Fitz,
Now that,
a man named Fitz Gary.
I know. Now somebody has to explain what Straight Creek was not your average road. That was nothing but a
It was a dirt
wide
road.
dirt path.
But Pink told me that it came out in Bartow, West Virginia,
Oh,
and I could
okay.
pick up
And it did. Yes,
92.
it did. Up through the Little Fork. Yes, it did.
I thought, oh, okay, it's just a little skip
Oh,
over
my
here.
gosh.
Little did I know that it was, oh my gosh, it was miles and miles away.
Well, Fitz had the only house in that valley. And that
That's
was an
right.
unusual spot anyway. When was that house built? Do you remember? I mean,
It was called
1800?
the Old Klein Place.
Okay.
I don't know the year that it was built, but you remember Auburn Weiss.
yes,
Auburn Weiss lived there with Polly.
that's correct.
They had their daughter Delcy there,
Oh my
and
gosh.
she
you were
had
really
her
bringing
two
back
boys
memories.
there.
Oh, you were really bringing back memories. And it was nestled down to a little, fresh water spring-fed stream
Yes,
with beavers down in
Yes.
there. And it was wild. It was 2,000 acres
yes.
of wildness with this house planted right in. And it was quite a copious house. I mean, it was a very large house. It had several rooms in that house.
There were
a big
three
kitchen.
upstairs, three
Yeah.
downstairs,
Yeah.
comfortable kitchen,
Porches.
nice porch.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
It was fantastic.
yes.
All righty. So you met them, you met Fitz, and what did he say? You can put your sleeping bag down here on the floor? What happened?
Well, we got to talking, and he had a whole bunch of friends over, so we got to playing music.
Oh, yeah.
And I had my drum. I never traveled without my conga drum. I'm fixing it. I'm going to give that to my son because I have a smaller djembe, which I can handle a whole lot
Yeah, I bet-
nicer.
I bet so.
You know,
Did you have a guitar then? Because you also played
I had a guitar. I have a guitar now.
Right.
Uh,
And you don't have arthritis in your little fingers. So Dan, my husband, had to quit
No.
playing because he,
No.
but that was the neat thing out there. Everybody, so many people, you either played something or you shook beans in a can, because when we got together with this counterculture community that
Yeah.
formed out there, it was counterculture in one way, but they were trying to absorb the culture of the mountains.
Yeah.
And then we put our own little spin on it.
and
we
always
would
singing.
always
We
singing.
were always singing, making music.
And have full moon parties, and the kids would
Yes.
play with their spoons, and we would have,
Yep.
line dances, and we would do all sorts of cool stuff
Yep. And eat
and eat.
and smoke pot
That's right. Back in the day,
back in
I
the day.
certainly did my share. Doesn't
Yeah.
agree with me now. I think I've just, I don't know, just doesn't agree with me now. But so there was Fitz, and he invited you, and then that probably really sold you on that spot. You
Well,
spent
I
years
told him what
there.
my plans were. I said, I'm looking for a place. I'm going to make a teepee. And I had a book by the I think they're Laubers, the Sioux teepee.
Okay.
And it had all the dimensions, the diagram, 19 feet tall in the center, 20 feet wide at the base.
Yeah,
and I
it was
thought,
a
you can live in
beautiful
that.
teepee.
So I told him, I said, this is what I'm planning to do. And he said, where are you going to do that? I said, well, I'm going to go on to Western West Virginia and see what land is available, see the kind of people that are there. And he said, well, you can pitch your teepee right here if
Oh,
you
wow.
want to.
Wow.
And I looked around and I looked at the valley, and he said, there's 1,800 acres here. And I thought, seek no further.
No,
And
you really stumbled into the.
I sure did.
Isn't that the neatest thing?
Yep.
And I had an intersection with Fitz and that house that caused me to come there because I drove into Bluegrass. It was pouring the rain down. Do you remember John Gardner? He lived in Steve Berman's house with Steve and Katie, but he was
Yes.
married to Katie first.
Hmm.
And he was
A
he went to
possum
Duke.
trot.
And he went to Duke with me, and we had left the city, and our pathway was to first go through Rappahannock County,
Hmm.
and that was a sort of a half step where we learned to farm. You know, I ran a stable. I got my first horse, which is the horse we brought down there, but Johnny came and said, you need to check out Highland County. Come look, because the land is really cheap. And we drove to Bluegrass, and they sent us on over to Fitz's Valley. They must have looked at our long hair or something and thought, we've got a place for you. It's over there.
Yeah, it's over there.
With the rest of those crazy people. And we went on over. We spent the night. And the next morning, it was raining like crazy. And Thompson comes on down, the owner of he and his wife Elsie drove up in their Jeep. Nobody knew them. They got out. Now, this is small town stuff. This is how fast. Nobody had TVs. You know, they didn't even have radios that worked because the signals weren't strong enough. There was no broadband anything. And he came on up and he said, I hear that someone's looking for a farm. I've got a farm for sale. And he said, I'll show it to you right now. It's pouring rain, and he's in a Jeep. And so we get in our car, Jeep, whatever it was, and followed him on over and bought it on the spot from him. And all he wanted.
Marvelous.
And it was a $20,000 deal. We didn't have the $20,000 right then, but we gave him $20,000 in cash for an 80-acre farm. And all he wanted out of the whole thing was the right to come back and pick blackberries. And he was a guitar picker, and he used to sit on his front porch, chewing tobacco, spitting off the front porch, and throwing his trash as far as he could. So that we took out cattle truckloads of trash because he never moved it. He would throw it as far as he could. The older he got, the closer Miles got to the house because he could only throw so far.
Yeah.
And Jesse Thompson, that's his name, Jesse. And just a great guy. But the place was a wreck. And so we'll talk about that because I want to talk about you. But it's interesting that Fitz played a part in your relocation there.
Absolutely.
And a vital part in ours. He was just a connecting point.
Yes.
Pretty cosmic.
Yes, indeed.
It was just cosmic.
Yep.
All righty. So then you went. Where did you get the hides and everything, the canvas to build your teepee? What did you actually make it out of? Because I was in there, and it was beautiful.
I went to New York City. By then, I didn't have any vehicle. And I went to New York City. I hitchhiked to New York City.
Wow.
And in those days, you could hitchhike and you were safe.
Yes, right.
Because you actually got rides.
Yeah.
And usually fairly decent people.
Right.
I'm going to do a little rabbit trail here. I was shot at one time by somebody driving a truck, but they
on your way up.
Yes,
Oh,
but they kept on going.
Yeah.
I said, okay, as long as they don't stop
It
and,
was your hippie
and
aura.
beat me up or something.
Somebody said, I'm going to get me a hippie today.
Yeah. Well, I went to New York City and I bought a roll of, I think it was 9 ounce or I don't know if it was 9 or 15 ounce because that was a long time ago of canvas,
Right.
duck canvas.
But it wasn't waterproof, so then you would have had to waterproof.
I waterproofed it.
Did you do it with paraffin, beads? What'd you do? How'd you do it?
I did it with kerosene.
No kidding. That'll
I
waterproof?
soaked it in a...
Sort of.
Yeah, sort of. It'll the
just
water will
runs
run
down the
off
side.
and not drip through.
Yes, I understand.
Because it is a slope.
That's right, it is.
Yeah, it is a slope. But
I
anyway,
wonder how the Indians did it.
yeah.
Maybe with buffalo fat. Hard to say.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a rabbit trail. Go ahead.
Yeah. But before I got to the part of the teepee, I got to know the people in Bluegrass. And some of the people were, some of the people were standoffish.
Sure.
Okay. But the vast majority of people just opened their hearts
That's right.
and their homes.
That
And
is
they
right.
said, you're welcome here anytime you want. And I had long hair and beads.
I don't think they were standoffish. Yeah, you did have one.
I had an eagle claw earring.
I don't think they were standoffish even because of that. There's something about the way the ones that are standoffish because you're new. I mean, I think that had a lot to do with it. If you aren't born there, if your granddaddy wasn't born there.
That's right.
They just sort of pushed you aside and went on with the main track of the population they could relate to.
You just keep stirring up stories for me because, your grandfather, where are you from? My first Maple Festival in Monterey.
Right.
I was selling beadwork on the street, and this gentleman comes over, an older fellow, with his wife, I guess, assume it's his wife, and another couple, elderly couple, walk up the street, look at the beads, look at me, and says, well, how long has your family lived here? But I knew that he was a visitor from outside. I knew that he wasn't,
right.
he wasn't
didn't have
the best
sensitivity
friend.
to know.
Yes. So I looked at him and I said, my family's been here around 20,000 years. How about yours? And he turned red and got angry and told his wife, come on, let's get out of here. And went walking up the street.
So he didn't buy any beadwork from you?
No, he did not. Yeah. But those were the days.
Those were the days. So there were a bunch of us, capital in quotes, coming out to the mountains. And then we learned so much from the generation that was there, which was what we now look back and call the greatest generation. Most of those people are dead because even now they'd be over 100, the few that survived.
Right.
Their children had left. That's how I got my farm. So many of the farms were vacant. In fact, those mountains were more inhabited in the early 1800s, mid 1800s, than they were by the time we got there 100 years later.
Right.
As a matter of fact, all the tops of the mountains used to have wonderful farms. There were orchards up there. There were all sorts of, you would see when you were riding or hiking like you did.
Yeah.
But I realized that because their children were gone, a lot of them were so kind and excited that we wanted to learn anything about what they were doing, that they were more than willing to share how to hunt, how to garden, how to milk a cow, how to skin a rattlesnake and put it on the back of your saddle.
How to dig ramps.
How to dig ramps. Matter of fact, how to make chestnut rail fence. We refenced our whole farm. And we dragged what was remaining of that old chestnut from the blight that were still standing down out of the mountain with the workhorse and everything.
Yes.
And did that. They were willing to show you how to do, standing seam roofs. They were willing to show you how to put pipe in the ground, to run pipe from your spring to, I'm just thinking of things that we did. But, they taught me how to raise chickens. And then they would always be there to save us when we would goof up.
And Linda, something, a lot of the folks outside of the country, people in the city, looked at hippies with, some derogatory feelings, but not realizing that we pretty much worked every day. We were busy every day. We never just sat around and ate. We didn't do that.
We weren't loafers.
Right.
Matter of fact, we had a hard time stopping in order to even get together. We didn't even get together as much because sometimes there was quite a distance between us. There was a contingent over in West Virginia, like with Dan and with Fritz and other people, not Fitz, but Fritz, and other people, that were scattered around, and we would get together. But we were a very industrious bunch. We were rebuilding farms,
Always
putting
doing
up
something.
new buildings, putting up, fencing, taking care of animals, raising our food, and learning how to do all sorts of things. Yeah. I was shoeing horses.
Yes, you were shoeing horses.
And I was delivering babies. In other words, we stepped up to the plate to learn the things that we had to learn to make life better for ourselves and the community that we'd stepped into. And we had a lot of gifts, actually. And then they were the old timers were willing to share their knowledge with us, and we were soaking it up like a sponge.
Yep.
And it was actually those comprised some of the dearest memories of my life, and I know even of your life, because it was just, which is why we're having this wonderful series where we just front porch talk it out.
Yep. Lots of memories, a lot of good memories, you know.
Well, and I want to explore them. So you were down there. There was, we might reiterate again, that there was no electricity. There never was to Fitz's farm. And it was sort of swampy. You were a wild food person. You developed that skill, right? I mean, you know, you would hunt mushrooms, and you would, you know, I don't know, did they have cattails down there? Did we?
Yes.
So did we eat the cattails?
In the beaver ponds, yes. I ate cattails.
Right.
I was very fortunate. I was very blessed that growing up, I left home when I was 15.
Oh, so you were a survivor guy.
And I went to Puerto Rico to live with my family.
Wow.
And that's where I went to high school and college. However, where we lived was fairly out of the way place. And my aunt and uncle, they had 11 children. 9 were living at the house at the time, but they still took me in.
Wow.
And they scraped every day to get the food on the table. They scraped. So we would go out with our slingshots, and we would shoot birds in the brush and bring them home. And Aunt Esther would skin them, cook them. She had chickens. I learned how to kill a chicken when I was 15. And I just loved that life. I just loved and I didn't wear shoes.
Yeah, that's right. So you were grounding all the time.
Oh my gosh, it was wonderful. You know, I really enjoyed it. But then I went to college, and then I worked in
What did you get a degree in? Is it accounting? Accounting. I thought so.
Yes.
I thought I remembered that.
Yeah. And I worked at the Damas Hospital in Ponce before coming back stateside.
Right.
When I came back, I went to Boston. There was a monastery there because I was called to the priesthood. And I knew that I was called in a spiritual sense.
Right.
So I went there. I was there for a year and a half. And if there's any Catholics listening, you know, forgive me. But I just couldn't wrap my brain around that I had to believe under penalty of sin that Mary was assumed into heaven, because it's not in the Bible. I was taught to believe in the Bible.
And when they say assumed, what did they mean?
Assume you leave earth and you go up before Mary died. In other words, she never died. She was assumed into heaven in bodily form.
Okay, I got you. That's
interesting. And I had a little bit of problem with that, and also had a little bit of problem with acknowledging that the Pope is the supreme Ayatollah of the Catholic Church.
Yeah, because he's voted in.
So, you know, and I had issues with that, but I don't have issues with Catholics.
Right, I
because
understand.
if you love Jesus,
you're
on the good side.
That's correct.
You're on the good side. So
right.
It's just where you go to practice that love and to express your love.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah. So after a year and a half, I came back to New York City, and I worked in the Puerto Rican Community Development Project, which was a grassroots organization helping Puerto Ricans and Dominicans get their GED, get jobs, get all this. That was my first teaching experience.
And we might add that is now what you're doing here in Bath County.
And I'm still teaching
other
GED.
End of the scale of life.
Of life.
and you're helping people get their GEDs now.
Yeah.
Out of an office in the library.
It's wonderful.
I know. What a blessing. That is quite a life that you have led. What an arc. And the fact that, you know, we crossed paths for a period of however many years, 25 years I was here and then I left. So I now live in Roanoke.
Yeah.
But I want to capture and relive some of that some of those
Yes.
wonderful memories with some of the people that were young with me when we were, I mean, I had a baby at home on the farm in Highland County when I was 27.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's 50 years later.
Right.
That is the wildest thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's just so wild.
It is so wild.
It is so, so wild.
Our first daughter is named Leah because ever since I met Leah Keckley, she was Scoop Swecker's sister,
Oh, for goodness
lived in
sake.
Bluegrass. I had never met a Leah before.
Is it
And I fell in
L-E-I-A?
Leah.
Oh, okay.
That's how
Leah.
she spelled
That's
it,
right.
and that's how
Isn't
our
that
daughter.
a biblical name?
Yes, it is.
Mhm.
Yes,
I
one
forget
of
who-
Jacob's wives.
Okay, there you are.
Yeah. I fell in love with that name.
I love that
and
name,
I
too.
still love the name
And I have
Leah.
a dear, dear friend who lives in Richmond who contacts me occasionally whose name is Leah.
And
She's a
Le-
fine
and-
person, too.
Leah was a beautiful, beautiful soul. She was probably in her early 90s when we started organizing in Highland County. She was very old. And she would still go out with a little a wooden chair, a wooden bench
Right?
in the garden and sit and plant the beans. And then move the chair, move the seat, and plant beans.
I know, they
and
just-
then move the seat.
That is
not
one of the greatest
stop.
lessons I learned from old timers down there because there was no retirement community. You and I were there. There was
That's
nothing
it.
like that. You either had the kids move in with you or you moved in with the kids. But you
Yes.
worked it out.
You worked it
You
out.
worked it out, and they always found things for you to do. If all you could do was make pies and sit by the wood stove and put a piece of wood into that kitchen fire in the wood stove, if that's all you did, and maybe clean the smoke off of the kerosene lamps, and
Yeah.
they always had jobs for you.
You were responsible.
You were responsible,
You
and
were
you were a
responsible.
valued person.
That's it.
And then
Yes.
if you got to the place where you needed a different kind of care, then they provided that. But people lived a long time, and they felt very, very fulfilled. I know, and satisfied.
Yes.
They also did a lot of sewing. I remember my next door neighbor, I had never seen. They taught me thriftiness because when socks were only a quarter a pair, they would actually cut off the worn bottoms of a sock, take the top of another sock, and sew a new bottom on a pair of socks and spend, an hour and a half doing that
Yeah.
when it was for a quarter. But that's what they did because they didn't waste anything. I'm going to cut this off and we're going to kick in and reopen another series. So I'm just going to thank you right now, but
Thank
we're
you,
gonna-
Linda.
We're going to start this up because this is just too cool. I got to hear more of your stories. Thank you, Tony, and we'll get right back to you. Hopefully you all have enjoyed listening to some easy banter from the middle of Appalachia. Crowning Touch Senior Moving will sponsor another visit to the front porch next Friday at noon. Meanwhile, remember, if you need help with the move, and especially if you are a senior, call Anna at Crowning Touch, 540-982-5800. We hope you'll tune in for more Front Porch Tales next week on Fox 910 and 104.3.